All right, let's talk about teenagers. The worst part's over. The worst part is learning the skeleton, the basic building blocks, the 4 food groups, getting that basic structure down. Now we can start applying it more, kind of getting applicable, getting practical. Let's talk about what a teenager is. Basically, on the one hand, they're not a child. One of the biggest mistakes I see parents of teenagers making is continuing to parent their teenager according to the same principles that they parented this person when they were a child. In fact, there's lots of books on child development over the lifespan. I want to write a book on parent development. In other words, you have to be a different human to parent a teenager than to parent a child. And nobody tells parents that. And you used to be able to tell this person, you're 5 years old and you say, I want to go jump in that water out there right now and it's 14 degrees outside, and it's really easy. You say, no, you can't. Well, all of a sudden you have a teenager and they say, I want to go out with my friends till 1:30 in the morning, and you go, no, you can't. And you wonder why that doesn't work. Okay? That's because nobody told you that all the rules changed. So number one, a teenager is not a child. The old analogy that children are like dogs and teenagers are like cats. When they're little, they're like dogs, and you come in from work and they're jumping up on you and they're climbing, Daddy's like a jungle gym, Daddy's home. And then all of a sudden, your sweet little kid turns into a big old cat, teenage cat, and you walk in and they just kind of look at you like, who died and made you emperor, And, they go up to their room and they only kind of wander down every now and then to sort of see if you've made something disgusting for supper or not. And it's like a cat, Okay, neither are they adults. They're not children and they're not adults. Our culture has sort of invented adolescence as some way to transition from being a child to being an adult. This is helping, like Ricola. Thank you. And adolescence is this preparation process to becoming an adult, and that is key. Everything we're going to be doing is predicated on the fact that the goal is to get rid of them. All right? And in our culture, adolescence essentially lasts to about age 30. Some would say age 53. But as we get started here, though, learn this. There's this ambiguity. They're not children, they're not adults. Well, if you're going to enter the world of adolescence, get used to that word. Welcome to the world of ambiguity. Because you've moved from this relatively straightforward world where you do say to a 5-year-old, you can't go jump in that water out there, to dealing with, to more relating to an individual whose job is to be developing their own ideas and their own relationships and their own perspectives, and the situations become more ambiguous and less in control. In fact, there's some senses, I tell people this sometimes, in which the dynamics of relating well to a teenager more parallel the dynamics of being married than they parallel the dynamics of parenting a 5-year-old. In other words, you have a relationship now. And when this person says, that feels really unfair, you can't say to a teenager, well, tough, that's the way it is, any more than you can say that to your spouse. Now, you really might not let them go to Vegas with your credit card with all their friends, but you have to at least hear them about it, like you would your spouse. You'd go, well, tell me about Vegas. What is it about that Vegas? I want to hear you. I want to let you matter. In other words, the dynamics shift to something a lot more ambiguous and a lot less cut and dried. And the sooner you learn that, the better. Now the questions aren't, can I jump in the pool in the cold weather? The questions are, should we let them go to that party? Well, we want them to have friends, right? But I remember what happened at that party that was at so-and-so's last year. Don't want that to happen. So maybe we should just say no. But then again, we want them to be making good choices on their own apart from us. If the first time that a child makes choices on their own is college, I promise you those choices will be bad ones, right? So we need them to be making good choices. Feel the complexity? It's like patting your head and rubbing your stomach, okay? I'm always intrigued by parents who say, we can't trust him. Talking about their teenager. I'm not sure what that means. Like, you want to be able to trust your teenager whose job is to be finding the limit and pushing it and crossing it, and their job is to be making mistakes now in a relatively safe environment of being under your roof still, so that they don't make mistakes that destroy their lives when they become adults. Their job is to be disagreeing with you. Their job is to be developing an identity apart from you and pushing your buttons. Do you trust them? What I think we ought to be asking is, can your teenager trust you to be someone who, regardless of how dumb their choices are or how smart their mouth is, you remain in relationship with them, strong, powerful, setting limits, teaching them, connected to them, having room for their vulnerability, managing your own fear and your need to control things to let them grow and learn? That's my question, is can we trust the parent? Or for us who are mentors of teenagers, can we trust us to be that strong in their lives? So, if you have questions and fears or concerns or frustrations or puzzlement about dealing with teenagers, that is not because you do not know what you're doing as a parent. It is not because you do not know what you're doing as a counselor or a pastor. It is because it really is that ambiguous. It really is that difficult. And this might be the most important thing I have to say to you about this afternoon is, good caring for adolescents means being willing to live in that turmoil and ambiguity with them. To face the vulnerability and the helplessness it creates, to not need to know all the time. The parents I worry about are the ones who know exactly what this person should be doing right now. This child should be doing this, and there's no question about it. Those are the ones I worry about. I like the parents who go, oh, I don't know, it could be this, it could be that, we're kind of struggling. I'm not sure we did right last time when we did this. Let's try this. I don't know. And they're really willing to live in that ambiguity with the teenager. If you're willing to do that, you're half the battle is fought. So, I'm sort of saying all that to give you that big perspective, but also to tell you that even I, the great Oz, will not be able to eliminate all of your uncertainty about dealing with teenagers. It's just kind of the nature of the game, okay? But there is a method to the madness. You're going to run into stuff with them that's going to push your buttons or feel weird. My middle child was our most rambunctious, and she would get away with things. She would push the envelope, to use that phrase I used earlier. We couldn't trust her in lots of ways. And this package came to the door one day, and it was addressed to her, and she grabbed it and she ran upstairs, disappeared in her room. And the next day, I come home from work, and my wife says, I kind of got curious and went up digging through her garbage, and I found a receipt. That package that she got was from Victoria's Secret, and it was for a black latex thong. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what is she turning into? And we worried, and we prayed, and what are we going to do? And we go up there and we knock on her door, and baby, we need to talk to you. And we kind of pull out the receipt, and it's like, we saw that you got this. And she's like, yeah. And we're like, well, honey, that black latex thong. And she reaches under her bed and she pulls up flip-flops. Black latex thong. Okay. So that's who you're dealing with here. I'm an expert. Yeah. All right. Anyway, there's a method to the madness. What we're going to do is we're going to apply our food groups to teenagers. Teenagers need these food groups applied in a special, frequency. All right? Good news is this. One of the reasons that dealing with teenagers can be difficult, one of the reasons it's tumultuous for them, but one of the reasons it's a great opportunity is once they get this abstract reasoning thing going, once they hit adolescence, they sort of start readdressing each of these developmental phases from childhood. Infants address attachment issues. Toddlers address boundary issues. School-age kids are all about good and bad. His piece is bigger. We have too much homework. I hate our minivan. You know how school-age kids are. Authority and agency start to be teenagers. But what teenagers are doing all over again is they're addressing attachment issues again. Do you want me? Do you like me? Do I have friends? Am I rejected? Am I included? Boundary issues. I want to dye my hair pink. I want to decorate my own room. What do you mean I have to come home at 11 o'clock? Boundary issues. Good and bad issues. Tell me. If you know teenagers, you know this is a biggie. I get a zit the hour before homecoming, and it's a meltdown. It's like, shame, oh my gosh. Or things have to be just right, or I hate this, and there's that whole good, bad thing for them. And then they're starting that whole issue of, can I be over my own life and making choices for myself in my life, but then I have to submit to you? Okay, so it kind of makes them crazy. But the good news is they're readdressing all these things in a way that makes this a very malleable time of their life, and so we can do good things with them. All right, we're about to launch, I promise, but there's one other thing I got to tell you. You got to understand where you are. Let's go global, like in the whole parenting universe. Where are we? There's 3 phases of parenting in general, like over the whole lifespan. The first one is called attending. And attending is like 0 to, 2-ish. And this is where you're just like keeping them fed and nursing them and, keeping them from gnawing on the power couplings. This is basically, you're not working on teaching them forgiveness and money management. This is like, you're just trying to keep them alive. Changing diapers. You know that phase when they're that little and all you're doing is like tag team parenting? You wipe this dirty bottom. From 2 to 12, we call that parenting. And that's where I'm engaged in their life. I'm helping them with their homework. I'm calling out spelling words. I'm disciplining them, comforting them when they're sad, throwing their birthday party, coaching their baseball team. I'm involved in the basics of parenting. And their identity is very much part of the family. An infant says, Mommy and I are one. A toddler says, Mommy and I are two. A parenting age child, a school age child says, Family and I are one. And then you get to the next stage, deparenting. And that teenager says, Family and I are two. I'm not like y'all. And what you're in is a phase we call deparenting. And that's gonna affect every aspect of the 4 food groups. Because as I deal with my teenager, I need to think in terms of deparenting rather than parenting. If you're here last year, I found in my notes, I also said I'm an empty nester now. And so I've been in another phase of parenting called MLK parenting. Free at last, free at last. Anyway, mine keep coming home though. All right. This deparenting theme, yes sir?
Just came off the top of my head. When you say a popular trend right now is putting cart before the horse in terms of parenting, because I see within our society, I see a lot of deparenting at a really young age.
What does that look like to you?
I'm trying to think of the movie. I couldn't finish it. It drove me nuts. It had Marissa Tomei in it, and it's rather new. It's not very, what is it? Grandparenting, yeah. And it, like I said, it drove me nuts because in my eyes, there was a lot of this deparenting and not getting down on their level and not practicing this authority agency very well.
Right, yeah. Well, if what you're saying is, if you're talking about a loss of a role of authority in the home, that's not deparenting. Okay. Deparenting is going to be something else. I'll start to unpack it more later. Yeah, what we see in some ways in our culture is a loss of the role of being a parent who is in authority, which is something you do a whole lot in the parenting stage. But the other thing I see is a lack of deparenting in the sense that we have helicopter parents. It's like you can't find any place to stay in Oxford, Mississippi. Why? Because all of the parents of the students own the condos, And I was thinking, what would it be like to go to Ole Miss now where every time I went down to the square I saw all my friends' parents? And that would defeat the purpose of going to college because we're There's this, parents identify with their children so completely that they never let them go. Anyway, let's talk about it. Attachment. What does attachment look like to a deparenting teenager? Attachment to a baby means holding them and cuddling them and goo-gooing them and So try that with your 16-year-old son and get back with me. Basically, to relate to a teen, to attach to a teen, to connect with a teen, you got to understand, well, your question might be a real helpful one here. Let's talk for a second about the dynamics of authority. How does authority work over the lifespan? Let's pick up on this. There are three things you need to be able to do with authority. You need to be able to be over other people in authority. You need to be able to be under an authority. And you need to be able to be neither. Did I spell that right? I before E except after C? I don't know. Within authority, sometimes I need to be over you. Sometimes I need to be under, like I stop on time. But I also need to be able to be a peer. And being a peer means I'm not either one. If you come up to me later on and you say, hey man, what's a good place to eat in Nashville? I probably won't be in the role I am here. Like, well, I will tell you. Let me answer your question. I'm an authority. I'll probably go, I don't know. Let's ask somebody. I'll be being a peer. I'll be being a fellow human with you. And we have to be able to do all three of these in relationship. Now, when you're parenting a child, what are you? You are over them, right? You say no, and they're supposed to do it. Now, this is what happens when you get to teenager, and this is a huge important piece about how you show attachment and love to a teenager, is in relating to them, you stay in your position of being over, but you add that you make room for peership. You show love to a teen by showing them, by how you relate to them, that what they say matters to you, that their opinion is important to you. Even if it's the craziest thing you've ever heard, you don't come to this over position first. You hear them. So they say, I hate chemistry. Like the dumb parent type is going to say, well, that's just fine. I guess you'll love being a garbage man one day then, won't you? The neither person says, man, I hated chemistry too. In fact, I saved my notes from chemistry after the exam because I was thinking maybe I'd have to take it again. And it's one of the reasons I became a psychologist instead of a physician, because I can't do chemistry. I don't blame you for not liking it. By the way, if you don't make above a C, I'm going to take your car. But God, so get the whole chemistry thing. Now, what I've said is you matter. They say, oh my gosh, that sermon was so boring. The dumb parent person is going to say, well, if you quit doodling on your bulletin and listen, maybe you get something out of it. All right? Attachment to them, deparenting, loving attachment to a teenager would say, well, sometimes church can be challenging in terms of the things we learn. How would you preach the sermon differently? Good point. What'd you think? You still need to go to church with the family. Okay, we don't lose this. We're not abdicating. We're not turning the family into big kumbaya encounter group where they can call you hotcakes and daddy-o. You still have your authority. Okay, so don't panic. Parents always freak out at that, but that doesn't mean that you can't also touch this peer thing. It means I remember some parents brought a kid to me once, and they said she won't talk to us. I mean, she just keeps to herself. We don't understand what the problem is. She won't open her mouth. And, she was sitting there in the office, and I said, well, let's ask her a question. Try it out. And I said, how'd you feel about coming to the shrink's office today? And she said, I didn't want to. They just told me I was coming at the last minute. And the mom goes, we did not. We told you 2 Tuesdays ago that you were coming here, and this is what I mean. She never listened, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, I wonder why she doesn't open her mouth. In other words, parents who want to love their kids are going to make some room for their opinion to matter in some way, okay? I remember when we were redoing our house at one point, my daughter Callie, the one I'm about to eat dinner with, she'd be there when we were talking to the contractor, and we'd say, we want to put a big round window right here. And Callie would go, oh. All right? The dumb parent person would say, well, when you can pay for a house, you can do it any way you want, can't you, young lady? What does peership say? You obviously don't like the way we're doing our house. How would you do it? I'm curious. What do you think? My youngest daughter, Bonnie, is committed to the belief that art paintings are the only form of art. She's 22. I was an English major, and I think the reason she says that is because I was an English major. But she's like, Shakespeare, that's not art. Art's just paintings. All right, now what does the English major in me want to say to her? Are you kidding me? Instead, I'm like, well, tell me, what about sculptures? Or is it just visual art? In other words, I want to open up and let her talk about it. What I'm saying when I say that is the same thing you're saying to a baby when they cry in their crib and you get them out of their little bed and you change their britches and you give them a bottle and you take care of them. What you're saying is, your voice matters to me. I want to hear you. And people wonder why teenagers make dumb choices. Teenagers have two questions in this order. Where am I loved and heard and matter? And what kind of choices will I make? And if they have bad answers to question number one, they don't care about question number two. And we go, I don't understand. It's like he's hurting himself making these dumb choices. And I'm like, he doesn't care if it hurts himself. All he cares about is that he doesn't have a good answer to question number one, who knows me and loves me and wants to hear me. So I don't care what I choose. So this is not a problem about his poor choices. This is a problem about the fact that he's residing in question number two because he doesn't have a good answer to question number one. Let's start hearing this kid. All right, and that hearing means being able to step into that neither position. Huge role for you as pastors, huge role for you as counselors, huge role for you as youth people, because, let me put it this way. How many of y'all have had toddlers? Dads who've had toddlers. All right, did you notice your relationship as a parent with your kid changed when they became toddlers? What happened?
They want to be with me.
Exactly. All right, little baby, me, just wants to be with mama. All right, once he gets his like Spider-Man underpants, his Batman, all of a sudden it's like, me and daddy are going to go do, and it's like, you're the cool guy. All right, why are you so cool all of a sudden? Because you're a parent, but you're not her. And this kid's trying to separate from her. This kid's trying to say, I don't need mom. You walk out of the house with a little toddler, boy or girl, like for an adventure, throw football in the yard or get a stick and go walk around or whatever. What do they always do? The last thing when they walk out, they go, bye, mama. It's sort of like, I don't need you anymore. Me and him, we're going to go have adventures. Okay, now they're too little to go do that on their own. Like, see y'all, I'm going to have adventures. But dad is kind of a surrogate. Dad is a parent, but he's not mom. So I can separate from mom by being with dad. Get that with me? Now, switcheroo to teenagers. Remember, teenagers are just big toddlers. Teenagers love third parties. That's why this is golden age for you guys in the church, because y'all are parental type people, but you're not them. Okay, so they can come to you and say, I got to tell you I have the secret, or I got to tell you I'm struggling this way, or I got to tell you let's go to do a lock-in or go to a movie or take a snow skiing or whatever, because I'm out on this adventure with you apart from them. And that's so huge in terms of developing an identity apart from their parents. And it's a huge thing y'all can do to be coming in here and saying, I want to hear you. Okay?
This is also why after they're toddlers in school, they take it back to mom.
Yeah, right. You're useless now. All right, that's attachment. Another mom asked me in a conference once, she said, my teenage son won't ever talk to me. Like, what do I do? And I never know how I'm going to answer questions like that when people ask me stuff. And what came to my mind is I said, well, what do you want to talk to him about? And she stopped and she said, well, I want to know like stuff he's doing so I can know if he's doing something wrong. I'm like, that's what you want to talk to him about? It's like, yeah. I can't imagine why he doesn't want to talk to you. All right. Boundaries. As we've been alluding, this is a huge one for teenagers because it's all about getting a me, getting a sense of self, learning to say no. Like I said earlier, being a teenager is just a giant form of being a toddler. Don't tell them I said that. It's like those movies, in the 50s where ordinary insects and animals would get hit by cosmic rays and turn into gigantic monsters and terrorize the town. It's kind of like that. It's just gigantic, horrible 2-year-olds that can drive, But this is a good thing because the goal, remember, is to get rid of them. Exactly. The goal is to create an adult here. The goal is not to create a compliant teenager. Compliance is fun. Parents love compliance. They're very proud of their little soldier when he gets merit badges or when he goes to grandma's house. But let me ask you this question. How are the compliant people doing in life? Okay? So we want to develop a sense of self here. We want them to be getting an identity that is their own. This is more the Joshua and the ye thing. So several different dynamics with teenagers and boundaries. One is, it's one of the reasons you will see them having so much more of a focus on their relationship with peers. Part of that is that third party bit again. Their peers are a safety group, but they're not the parents. In fact, teenagers tend to invest their peers with the same level of power that a school-age kid invests in their parents. In other words, a teenager will feel as much shame and scorn from their peers' disappointment as a 5-year-old would feel from dad's disappointment. Get it? Because they're shifting that allegiance out into the world. Now that helps them separate, but it's also part of becoming an adult. I mean, they need to kind of leave their parents. In the sense of like, we're not best friends with our parents, are we? I mean, we're each other's best friends. Like if I have a problem, I'm going to come to one of y'all, my peer group, the body of Christ. I'm not going to go to my parents. I mean, I'm 53 years old. I mean, you would feel uncomfortable if I said, y'all, I got to tell y'all, my mom, she's my best friend. Y'all kind of go, okay. Anyway, we're supposed to be pulling away. But you'll also see them checking back with you. And parents will talk about this, and it's a lot of the role for you third-party types, us third-party types. Mine would always not talk to us for 4 days straight, and sort of roll their eyes and grunt if we asked them anything. And then at 11:30 at night, they come in and pile on the end of the bed and want to talk for 2 hours. And it's like, where did you come from? We've been trying to talk to you for days, and now we want to go to bed. Or they'd always come in at the best part of the movie. You're watching a movie and they're like, oh my gosh, the murderer is, and they'd come busting going, hey, and you got to stop it. That reapproaching is part of the separation process too. I don't want to be with you, but I want to check back in. I want to be independent and old and big, but I want to be like a little kid and talk your ear off. Well, you'll see that. So one was the peer thing, they're getting out. Another is you'll see them making funky choices to sort of declare their boundaries. Most teenagers who are healthy, and you want to see this, I can't tell you how many people I see as adults have a lot of anxiety and don't feel a real sense of agency and power in their lives. And I ask them, did you rebel as a teenager? Did you individuate? Did you have your own mind? And they're like, no, I was one of those really good teenagers. Really good teenagers worry me. A teenager needs to be pushing the limits some. In fact, let's talk about this at some point. I think we can talk about it tomorrow. What do you do with the good little teen? The one who kind of wants to hang out with you at youth group, help you serve the refreshments, and out there with their friends. What do you do with the compliant teen? You need to be getting them edgy. They need somebody to empower them and push them out of the nest and say, you need to be taking some risks here. We need to help them individuate. Look for that. Be worried about the ones who aren't. Be worried about the teenagers who you go, he is such a good boy. Okay? I want to see him being a little edgy. Individuating. Now, rebelling we don't want to see. Rebelling is usually a function of something going on that's wrong, but I want to see them making some funny choices. They need to find some way of being different from you or different from their parents. And they will push as hard as they need to push in order to find that way. And I recommend that you tell parents, or that you accept one that's low down on the totem pole. Like my kids often wanted to call me John, and I'm like, fine. I mean, they're gonna do something. Having a teenager is like being carjacked. You know, this guy's got a gun to your head in the car, and he could kill you, he could take your car, and if all he wants is your cash, and he's gone, I'll take it, all right? And if all my teen wants to do is get a little cartilage pierced, like, great, where do I lock in at that rate? Like, if you're gonna rebel, that's cool, do that. What I see the parents who want to keep them compliant, like, no, we'll have no cartilage piercing in our house, and the kid's like, okay, I'll notch it up a little more. Let's try on this. How about pot? You know, no pot. And they're like, well, I have like a meth lab in the basement. I mean, they'll take it as far as you want. They got there's an 11. You know, their dog goes to 11. In other words, what they're saying is, do you have room for me to be me at some level? And if I want to like put like a little pink streak in my hair, I want to go, yeah. Sure, we'll try that out. Now, you know, in the context of that, we're not losing our authority over them, but we're trying to make some room for them. Look for the places, the edginess that you can accept and go for it. Don't be afraid of it. By the way, I think that one of the pieces that we address here, the number one emotion I experience that I see in the parents of teenagers, y'all tell me, what is it? Perfect. Anxiety, fear, you're right. I told some parents once, I can handle your teenager better than you can simply because I manage my anxiety better than you do. In other words, they're doing things that feel edgy and it creates anxiety for you. Now, what do parents do when they feel anxious? They control. And what do teenagers do when parents start controlling? They rebel. They make dumber choices, which then makes the parent feel more fear, which makes the parent controlling, right, which makes the teenager act worse, right, and that's why we have a job, okay? It's really simple. Problem with clear glasses is if you don't have them on, you can't find them. All right, another issue of discipline, of boundaries, is the issue of discipline. What does discipline sound like with a teenager? Y'all won't be disciplining your teenagers too much directly, but it's one of the ways I like to think about discipline, even if I'm interacting. I was in charge of a group of teenage boys at my church for a while, and I set these kind of limits on them. You probably will need to do this. Great for teaching parents, but with teenagers, remember the goal is for them to become adults. Now, bottom line, secret of the universe, everyone is disciplined. All right? I don't care how old you are. I don't care who you are. Everyone is disciplined. Now, in adulthood, we're disciplined by reality. I do not have to pay my taxes. No one makes me pay my taxes. But if I don't, the black helicopter starts circling my house, you know, whatever. I do not have to drive the speed limit. But if I do drive the speed limit, I might get a ticket, blah, blah. I didn't have to come here today. I could have told Joey, yeah, man, I'll be there, and not shown. There'd be consequences for that for me. Everyone is disciplined. Now, adolescence is a huge time in which we shift discipline from do this because mommy said so to you can have anything you want in life, you just have to pay for it. In other words, parenting a child says you need to do what I say now. Parenting an adolescent says, well, you know what? I'm not going to stay up till 3 in the morning to make sure you come in on curfew. I'm just telling you this. If you are in late, I'm going to take your car for a week. You pick. Okay? So discipline starts to have more of a, I don't have a dog in this fight. You choose. Here are your choices kind of presentation. Now, why is that important? Number one, it gets the parent out of the way. And now this child is dealing more with their own choices than they are with the parent. I don't want the parent in there trying to influence this child to choose one way or the other. They won't be there when they're adults. And besides, it makes the child make poor choices. It's like, I'm going to disobey because dad wants me to obey. But secondly, it starts teaching that cause-effect nature of the universe. That you can choose anything you want as an adult, you just have to pay for it. So with teenagers, I don't want to be standing over them telling them, you better not do this and you better not do that. I want to let them choose and make them pay. And then let them learn. We were eating dinner one night, me and my wife and Bonnie, the one who doesn't believe in art. She was about 18 at the time. And we three were eating dinner. She was the only one left home. The others were off at college and all that. And we ate dinner, and after dinner, my wife and I start gathering the dishes to clean up. And as Bonnie walks to the kitchen, I said, Bonnie, would you help us clean the kitchen? And as she passed me and started walking up the stairs, she just looked at me with a sneer and said, are you on pills? And walked upstairs. Are you on pills? You get it? I'm not going to do it. Are you crazy? And she walks upstairs. Well, my wife and I look at each other like, she just said, are you on pills? All right, now what are my options there? I can go upstairs and have a showdown. Oh my gosh, young lady, I cannot believe you would talk to your parents like that. You get down right now and you're going to clean those dishes until your hands have, dishpan hands right now. Well, how would that have gone? I could let it go and she could talk to us like that and not do the dishes, and what have I taught her? Neither one of those options felt good to me, so I didn't know what to do. And I tell parents, take your time. Parenting a teenager is a lot more like playing golf than it is playing tennis. Tennis, that serve is coming over, and you better be ready to respond. Golf, you can squat and check out the lay of the land and take your time, because they have abstract reasoning and they can remember for a long time. If you pop a 2-year-old on his leg for what he did yesterday, he's just going to go, what? But you ground a teenager next week for something they did today, they know exactly what you're talking about. Take your time. So I took my time and I thought, well, what should I do to her? All of a sudden I got this idea. I just went over to the key ring, got her keys, and put them in my pocket. Didn't say a word. And about 30 minutes later, I heard her clacking down the stairs, I could smell her before I heard her. She was all done up. And I heard her walk across the kitchen and go to the key thing, and her keys rustling. She's looking for her keys. And finally she comes, she goes, I can't find my keys. I didn't say anything. She came in, she goes, I can't find my keys. I said, I know, I have your keys. She goes, well, I need them. I said, what? She goes, I'm going to Chris's. I said, you want your keys right now? She goes, huh. And I said, are you on pills? I said, I tell you what, I'm going to keep your keys until we have more dirty dishes. And at that point, you may wash them and earn your keys back. All right, no fuss, no muss, no conflict. You can have anything you want in life. You just have to pay for it. I didn't say never talk to us like that again. You can talk to us like that again. You will lose your keys. Get it? Discipline for teenagers starts to become something that's more about your choices in the universe. And when you don't do that, when you try to control a teen, they think more about not being under your control than they think about making wise choices. Dad's going to win? No way. I'd rather cut my nose off to spite my face and let him win. Okay? I like to get out of it and say, do what you want, but you're going to pay yourself. So, parenting would say, see them spending their money foolishly and would say, you better be careful about how you're spending your money. De-parenting would say, I got some ideas about how you're spending your money. Would you like them? Let me know more about this discipline thing. Parenting would say, you better act nice when you go to grandma's house. De-parenting would say, you can act any way you want, but if you're ugly at grandma's house, I'm taking your car. You getting the theme? Okay. Yes?
I know some parents of younger children who kind of take the de-parenting tactic, like you can choose this discipline or you can choose to obey. I'm just wondering your thought on that in terms of developmentally.
Yes, I actually like to use this approach with kids regardless of the age, but it makes a great point when you're talking about adolescence. I like to say, when mine were little, they wouldn't clean their room. And my wife would be nagging them all day long, clean your room, clean your room, clean your room. And they're like, I did clean it. And what I remember sitting and thinking, what do I do at this point? How do you make them clean their room? How do you make anybody do anything? So I just went up there and I said, all right, here's the deal. You don't have to clean your room. Mom's tired of yelling at you for doing it. We're tired of begging. We're tired of nagging. The TV will not come on in the house until your rooms are parent clean. Not 7-year-old clean, parent clean. TV won't come on, but you don't have to clean your rooms. You can have dirty rooms and read the classics. I mean, whatever you want. I don't have a dog in this fight. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, Saved by the Bell is on in 10 minutes, Which kind of dates me, but yes.
Have you noticed a difference in parenting styles and parenting, teenager problems between, military families and kind of, military families versus, everybody else?
Yeah, the basic principle for discipline, it's going to parallel this a little bit. It's lead off topic tomorrow. But the universe, I think, can be boiled down to love and limits. Okay? God calls them peace and righteousness. Mary and Martha. Grace and truth. I am the Lord your God who led you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. I'm a great guy. Next line. Usually I have no other gods before me. In other words, God's always talking in this love and limits category. And good discipline always has this element to it, in the sense that I'm going to set limits on you, but it's going to be in a way that is understanding of this neither category. In other words, if I tell my child, if you leave your bike in the rain again, I'm going to hang it up in the garage and you don't get to use it tomorrow. Now, I find their bike in the rain. What I need to do in a loving way is not say, oh my gosh, I give you this good bike. Here's the shame thing from the example earlier. I give you this good bike and you leave it out in the rain. This is what I've learned about you. Is this how you take care of your things? Huh? I'm not going to shame them. I'm going to say, you know what? I love you and I'm so sorry. Remember I told you that if you left your bike out in the rain again, I'd put it up? I know that's hard. I'm sorry, but I need to hang your bike up. And one of the things I see missing for military families very often is the integration of this love thing. It's all limits, limits, limits. Because there's not a lot of love and limits in the Army. You know, there can't be. It's like, you know, I know you're a terrorist and it's really important to you, but we got to shoot you. You know, it's like, I know, you know, you love Allah and, you know, we're the great Satan, but, you know, anyway. Okay, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. All right, let's finish up our food groups. Good and bad. Question number 1 is, how do you help a teenager with suffering? And question number 2 is, how do you help a teenager with their shame? We'll address these in 5 minutes. Perhaps we should, is it important that we stop on time, Joey?
Somewhat.
Okay. Well, why don't we slow down here? And I tell you what, I don't want to rush through these. I want to do the good and bad piece tomorrow morning and authority issues tomorrow morning and really unpack these because really looking at how to approach teenagers in these areas is going to be really important. And then we'll talk more about the actual hands-on of counseling and all that. Why don't we save the last 10 minutes we have and do more questions about what we've said so far, because I feel like y'all have them. Yes, ma'am.
Right now I'm mentoring a little girl, and if you gave her the choice of doing the right thing or discipline, she would pick the discipline.
Yes.
So do you just follow through with that and then loving?
That's such a great question. Thank you. Yeah. For those of you who couldn't hear and for the tape, the question is, she's mentoring a young girl who, if you do give her the choice between the discipline and making a wise choice, she'll choose the discipline. Now, anything strike you as odd about that? What? The discipline doesn't bother her. Interesting. That means something else is maybe more important to her than the pain of the discipline? What might that be? Pride. What else? Reward, attention, relationship. Okay, good. At least you're thinking below the surface. In other words, she is saying, all things being equal, we don't like pain, do we? All things being equal, I don't want to be disciplined. All things being equal, I don't want to feel a bad experience. But with this girl, all things aren't equal.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, for sure.
In other words, my basic principle for this is you'll find kids of many ages, but especially teenagers who, when it comes to discipline, they have this attitude of like, you know what, you can beat me with a red-hot bicycle chain, and I ain't doing what you say. Principle for that is this child at some level needs to be heard. In other words, what they're saying is something is hurting me bad enough or making me angry enough to where I don't care about wisdom, I don't care about choices, I don't care about these things. All I care about is whatever, getting what I want, or showing you that you don't control me, or proving that you're wrong, or, you know, there's some message there. And that child needs to have that message heard before they have enough sort of clear memory RAM to actually run the basic program of pain and discipline is bad and I don't want that. Okay? So I want to start listening to that child, which looks like by the nods on your face that you're kind of getting that and doing that.
Well, she's got a family, messed up family, but that's what she does at school. They say, you're going to do this, or you're going to be disciplined. She's getting disciplined.
Right, yeah, right. So at some level, there's something there in her that's basically, I'm guessing, angry enough to say, I don't care, you can do what you want to me, I'm still doing this. I want to hear that anger. And for most adolescents, anger is a mask over hurt and not being heard and understood. So there's something missing there. We're going to talk some tomorrow about dealing with parents, and I would really want to find out how her parents could be involved in that process too. I always say that, you know, just seeing a teenager without engaging the parents is sort of like you bring your sick goldfish out of that nasty old aquarium and you bring him to me and I like brush all the algae and stuff off and I hand him back to you and you throw him in the same aquarium again. You know, it's great. Anyway, that's a good question. Yes, sir.
To kind of piggyback on that, so you have that type of student that will take the discipline and you try to move toward and to hear them.
Yeah.
They just stiff arm you continually.
What does a stiff arm look like?
You try to be with them. They either don't respond to you, or if you do be with them, they're just very uncomfortable and want to get out of it.
Yeah.
Or just kind of rude.
All right. And your question to me is?
What do you do if that person needs to be heard, like you said?
Right.
And you're trying to hear them and spend time with them, but they still push you away.
Yeah, that's a difficult one.
Perseverance, or
All right, for sake of those who didn't hear the tape, the question is a kid who's rebellious enough to where you try to approach them and they don't want to engage. They don't want to talk to you. When you do try to sit down and interact with them, they kind of push back, shut down, whatever. My thoughts on that are unless some of y'all are wearing like red spandex under your Carhartts, none of us are superheroes and we can't heal the world. And there will be some people we can't help and we need to manage that. Number two, all of us who got into some form of ministry or helping profession got into it because we get something out of helping people. And one of the things you got to give up is my need to fix this person. That means I sit down with a kid, I want this kid to like really open up and bring their heart to me, and you know what, if they do, I'm going to really be able to help them and it's going to be awesome. Now, can I let go of that wish? Now, actually, with a teenager, to the degree that you can let go of that wish, you actually start buying equity. Because a lot of teenagers, especially like this, don't want this whole counseling bit, and they don't want to be helped, and they don't want you sitting down and being a pastor in their lives or some shrink, trying to head shrink them. They don't want that. So what I do is, one of the questions I always ask teens is, do you want to be here? I'm like, no. And I'm like, well, how'd they make you come? I'm like, they just told me I had to. And I'm like, so what do you think they want you to talk about? I don't know. And I'm like, all right, so you and I both have a problem. It's like we got 50 minutes to kill and you don't want to talk about anything and I don't know what to talk about, so what do you want to do? I don't know. And I'm like, well, tell me about something you like. I like hunting. Well, tell me about hunting. And you know, and I would do 50 minutes in which we talk about deer hunting, you know. Now, you come back next week, this kid drags back in and you go, you want to be here this week? No. Did deer hunt any? And somebody he goes, you remember how deer hunt? And you go, yeah. And what, did you kill anything? And this kid starts realizing, wait a minute, you want to talk to me? Like, you're not trying to fix me? You want to talk to me? You want to know that I park music? You know, you want to know me? Okay, now that kid is going to start to, they'll slip up at some point. And that kid will say, I went hunting, but I didn't want to go hunting with my dad. And you're like, oh, like hunting with your dad, being with your dad stinks? Yeah, and you're in, okay? But what you do is you go diversionary. It's like deer hunting. In other words, if they don't want to go full on target, drop your target and go undercover. And before you know it, if this kid feels like they have an advocate in you, you care more about me than you care about your agenda of fixing me. That is their question. You care about deer hunting, you want to waste our time talking about deer hunting? My parents are paying all this money, we're talking about deer hunting. Okay? This kid says, I have an advocate in you, and they'll slip up. That's my thought about it. And if that totally doesn't work, I work with the parents. When I deal with children, I almost never see the child. When I deal with teenagers, I deal with the parents some, deal with the teenagers some, I deal with the parents and the teenager in the same room some, I deal with the teenagers some, deal with the parents some, and do musical chairs. So a lot of times the teenager just doesn't care. I can work through the parents and kind of coach them. More on that tomorrow. Yes, sir. Last question.
Hey, Robert, use this.
Question is, from a parent's perspective, like, I love this stuff, but what is it about my human condition, parent human condition, that the primary default mode is not this, but it seems to be constant struggle to remind ourselves? It's almost like I want a little John Cox in my pocket to pull out and go, hey, speak to my kids for me and remind them, ask the thoughtful question instead of yell at them. I'm just curious if it seems like the human default mode for the parent is clash.
Right.
And not there. And what is that about the human condition? Is it past stuff in our own lives? Is it sinful condition? Just speak
part of it
to
is
that.
there's kind of a practical developmental answer and there's a spiritual answer. Developmental answer is the generation that parented me and somewhat y'all was authority-based, like shame-based. Like the generation that, like the great generation, the one that was in the war, and those are sort of born in the late 20th century. The parenting model was, we have raised you better than that, young man. In other words, a shame-based model. I'm going to make you do what I want you to do based on shame. It's control-based, it's a shame-based. So it is what we learned. I think that if you look at the Bible doesn't talk about, you better be a good boy, not a bad boy. Do you understand? I'm so disappointed in you. The Bible's not real shamey. The Bible's a lot more practical. The Bible's a lot more like, there's a road that's wide and many go that way and it leads to death. And there's a road that's narrow and not many go that way and it leads to life. You want to die or not? Let's get a show of hands. We'll pass a sign-up sheet around. The Bible's very practical. You read the prophets. The prophets aren't real shamey. It's not like you've done this horrible thing and y'all are evil and bad. It's more like, I've given you this and I've given you that and I've given you this and I've given you that and you've turned on me and you've betrayed me, and so I hope you like the weather in Babylon, but I'm going to restore you to myself. And it's very practical. It's like, you've wounded me and so there's consequences, but I'll restore you. It's not a big showdown. And the Bible's not a lot about, you better do this. It's more like, this leads to life and this leads to death. Choose ye this day. Okay? Now, for creatures that were not created to manage an understanding and a knowledge of good and evil, humans, to go eat of a tree of the knowledge of good and evil, what do we start doing? We start judging. We start controlling. We start trying to make things be my way. I say, you're bad. You're a bad kid. Okay? That's naturally in our gourds, in our noggins, is this sense of right, wrong, this is the way, this is not the way. I'm going to make you do it this way, I'm going to make you do it that way. And you meet a child who comes out of the womb the same way and you get set up for a power struggle. So developmentally we learn it. I think biblically speaking, the Bible talks a lot more about a choice-based, this leads to life and this leads to death, choose ye this day. The Bible doesn't talk so much about being bad or good, it talks a lot more about being wise or being a fool. Okay, so this kind of discipline says, it's not about you doing it my way. This is a question about whether you learn wisdom or not. Now that goes against our nature, having eaten the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because we're all about judging, we're all about controlling. So it does go against your nature, very much. The reason I came up with this style of discipline is because I had that anger problem I told you about last hour. I got tired of yelling at them to clean up their rooms. And I thought, why am I yelling? It's because I feel powerless. Why do I feel powerless? Because I'm trying to do something impossible. Make someone else do something. How do you make anybody do anything? How do you make a kid clean up their room? Pick up their stuff. And you can't. How do you make a kid take a nap or be polite to grandma's? But what you can do is help them learn to control themselves by making wise choices. And I kind of got myself out of that impossible position where I was angry. Anyway. All right, let's close in prayer. And I really look forward to being with y'all tomorrow and continue to work. Y'all are great. Y'all are working hard and This is how this has to happen. You can't teach human growth in a book. You got to have to interact and have questions and discuss it and say, yeah, but, and all that. So y'all are doing a great job at your part of that. Let's pray. Father, I know these people have been listening to lots of people for days, and their brains are full and their hearts are full and they're probably tired, and I ask for your blessing to them, your restoration of them, peace for them, that you would help them metabolize the things we're talking about, both in their own lives and in their ministries. I pray for them that they would have good rest at the end of this day and at the end of this week. Thank you for giving us this. Thank you for letting us get to be part of your kingdom. Thank you that you made your kingdom work not just with your own action, but with us as mediators, with us as ambassadors for Christ, with us as good stewards of the manifold grace of God, that we get to participate in that process. Thank you for that. We love you, and we thank you that you love us. We pray all of this in Christ's name. Amen.
Thanks, Jeff.